everyone, and welcome to another episode of One on One. I'm your host, Hannah Balkowski, and today we are joined with Anthony Bonagura from class of 2008. He is the Director of Corporate Communications with the Philadelphia Eagles. So, Anthony, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Of course. So, as the Director of Corporate Communications with the Eagles, what does a day in life kind of look like for you?
Yeah, so just in the industry of sports, every day is a little different. You really never know what you're going to head into. But I think, on a day-to-day basis, in my role as a director of corporate communications, I am pretty much overseeing and directing all of our, we call it quote unquote, non-football PR communications. So really business and community. So basically working with every department on the business side of the organization. So the way our public relations department is structured is we have football communications, where we have some folks that are working with our players and coaches on press conferences, setting up interviews, prepping them for those interviews, keeping track of team stats, working on the media guide, game notes, all those types of things. And I assist with that. But then on the other side, we have myself and another member of our department who is actually a LaSalle grad, who handles all of the PR for our corporate sales and activation department, our community relations department. If we're sending players to Children's Hospital of Philadelphia or to an elementary school to teach kids about, healthy eating and exercising, they're the event planners. They're organizing those appearances, and then they come to us and say, okay, here's what the event is. Here's the who, what, when, where, and why. Depending on the significance of that event, we'll either write a press release or a media alert. We'll do some media pitching ahead of time to get people to come out and cover those events, interview our players or team executives who are on site. Obviously we're big Go Green advocates. For anyone who's been at our stadium or has seen pictures of our stadium, we have over 10,000 solar panels. We have a comprehensive recycling and composting program, water filtration efforts. So there's a lot of environmental reporters who are interested in the type of work that we do in the environmental space. And we have a Go Green spokesperson. So when those requests come in, we work closely with him on getting him prepped for all of those interviews so that he's communicating all the right messaging that we want to get out to the public. We have a really large philanthropic arm called the Eagles Autism Foundation, which first started out as a one-day bike ride and 5K run walk, and has kind of manifested itself into a year-round effort, which is raising funds for cutting edge autism research and care programs. So I work closely with the executive director on kind of telling their story and pitching all the different events they have going on. And then lastly, really any event that we have at the stadium, any non-Eagles event, concerts, soccer matches, lacrosse championships, the NHL Stadium Series, we're usually there to kind of assist with those events because we're familiar with the stadium, we're familiar with the press box, the locker rooms, and a lot of these promoters and organizations that are coming in aren't really too familiar with our stadium. So we're kind of there as a last line of defense and kind of assist them where they need it. We're on site to help them however they see fit. So, we have our hands in a lot of different places, but the good part about it is, you get to develop so many relationships with people both inside and outside the building.
Yeah, for sure. That's awesome. So you get to work with a bunch of different groups and programs throughout the Eagles, which is like kind of a big team project, which is awesome.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So how did you get started working with the Eagles? That's pretty awesome, I would say.
Yeah. So when I was a senior, at LaSalle. And at the time, you were only able to have a maximum of 2 internships to receive credit. I don't know if that structure has changed since then. And I'm kind of dating myself. I graduated in 2008. So it seems like it was a snap of a finger, but in the reality, it's been a few years. So I knew at the time that I wanted to be really strategic with my 2 internships. I really wanted to have that second one be in the second semester of my senior year so that hopefully it could kind of springboard into a full-time job. So my second internship was with the Philadelphia 76ers as a PR intern. my first one was with the Camden River Sharks, which was an independent baseball team. They're now defunct in South Jersey. They're no longer operating. But it was that second internship with the 76ers, working for a professional team. Things are a little bit more structured, really opened my eyes to the industry and said, this is what I really want to do. I have a passion for communication, for writing, for working with a lot of different people, developing relationships, networking. So a lot of those things kind of worked hand in hand. At the time when my internship ended, when I graduated, I sent my resume out to pretty much every NBA and NFL team. Those were the two sports that I have a strong passion for. I got some emails back and some letters back, but nothing really firm, nothing full-time or really any full-time internships. However, the Eagles, being born and raised in this area, that was obviously one of the teams that I sent my information to. They got back to me and said, hey, Anthony, we don't have a full-time position available. We actually don't have any full-time internships available, but we do have a spot on our game day staff where you would come and support our department for the 10 games that we have, 2 preseason, 8 regular season games, help us transcribe post-game quotes, set up the press box, assist with media, as they need different things throughout the game. So I actually started out with the Eagles back then in 2008, just working game days. And that really gave me an opportunity to kind of cultivate a strong relationship with the PR department. They trusted me. A lot of the interns at the time were from out of state. So, during Thanksgiving weekend, during the holidays, when their interns would go home to visit family, or even during the off season when they didn't have any interns yet for that upcoming season, I would always volunteer my time and say, hey guys, if you need any help during draft weekend, or if you need someone to come in on Thanksgiving, or, the week of Christmas, just know that I'm here. So if you're shorthanded, feel free to give me a call and I can just drive right over the bridge. So just showing that initiative that I want to do this, I have the drive. And then that actually led to a full-time internship in 2010. I was basically a full-time member of the department. And then fast forward to the end of 2012, they created a new position on the corporate communications side to kind of build that from the ground up, because they really didn't have anyone doing that at the time. Everything was kind of focused just on football communications. And I think just having that relationship with them knowing who I am, the type of person that I am, the type of worker that I am, they felt like it was just a really would make the process a little bit more streamlined by bringing me in full time and then kind of throwing me right into the fire. So that was when I was hired full time, and I've been there ever since.
Wow, that's awesome that you were, I think showing companies and places that you make yourself available. That's super important.
Yeah, absolutely.
So obviously we have to talk about the Eagles Super Bowl win in 2018. What was that experience like from, inside the Eagles?
Yeah, well, that was a truly magical season. I'm hopeful that we have many more seasons like that, but I truly believe that first time, there's nothing like it. Not only was it my first time being part of a Super Bowl winning public relations department organization, but it was also the first for the team and also for the city. So we were all kind of enjoying it together as one big family, not just in Philly, but around the world, because, our fan base is worldwide. It wasn't until we played the Carolina Panthers on Thursday Night Football in mid-October, and we were kind of on a nice run leading into that game. Jake Elliott hit a 61-yard field goal to beat the Giants. I believe that was in week 3. We had a lot of other games kind of leading up to that, but then we beat the Panthers on Thursday Night Football. It was on the road. The team was feeling good. And something in me said, you know what, I think this is going to be the year. And I've said that before, but there was more of a feeling in my heart that just the culture in the building, the locker room, everybody was kind of pulling in the same direction. So, I was thinking that I think this is going to be the year. So I'm going to enjoy every second of it in the event that it is. And sure enough, there it was, won the Super Bowl. I think the most gratifying thing for me that season was the week of the Super Bowl in Minnesota. I was able to bring my entire family. My wife, my children weren't born at the time, so it was just my wife, my mother and father, my brother, and my sister-in-law. They were all able to kind of fly out and spend that week with me. We all kind of stayed in my one hotel room, all 6 or 7 of us. We all made it work. But just for them to be at that game, the confetti's coming down, they're running down to the front row, I'm running to them behind the end zone, and just being able to enjoy that experience is just in and of itself is amazing. But to do that with your family with you was probably the best part about that whole entire season. And just credit to the organization and our chairman and CEO, Mr. Laurie, for creating those opportunities for our employees, because we have a great family in the organization, and everyone is looking out for one another. So to be able to set up a couple of extra planes for family and friends to leave later that week to come out to Minnesota to spend that week with the employees who are working so hard to get everything ready for Super Bowl Sunday was truly a blessing. And I think that was the best part about that whole ride.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, just to be a part of something like that and to be there in person too. And, Philly fans are the best, regardless of what people say. I mean,
Yeah, I will say that at the time it wasn't funny, but I ended up catching the flu in Minnesota, and I did not get my flu shot earlier that year. So I came home, and it's literally as soon as we came home, we were preparing for the parade, like 2 days later. And I woke up and I had like 102-degree fever, and I was contemplating on whether I'm going or not. And I just decided to do it. And then by the end of the night, I couldn't even talk. I'm breathing in all this cold air because it was the beginning of February. Just think about, how you feel when you're like, really, that sick. But I couldn't even move for the next week and a half, ended up getting the flu. But, kind of looking back on it, it's a fun story to tell. And I'm really glad that, I didn't stay home that day, because that was also another magical day about that whole season, just being on one of those buses going down Broad Street and just seeing a sea of people, wearing Eagles shirts and jerseys. It's just would love to experience that again at some point.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully sometime soon that'll happen. Mm-hmm. And you got to make sacrifices. Who cares if you're sick? You got to go, right?
Exactly. That's what I was telling myself that morning.
Okay, let's see. Let's skip ahead a little bit. So while you were at LaSalle, you were a sports talk producer and host on LTV. Can you talk a little bit about that experience and like what your favorite parts of it were?
Yeah. So first of all, give major credit to Tanya Ellis. She was my advisor all 4 years at LaSalle. And obviously she was also the one kind of overseeing all of LaSalle 56 and all of the TV shows. So she instilled, a lot in me during those 4 years. And, kind of under her guidance, Sports Talk Philadelphia started out as just, kind of behind the scenes, working the cameras in the sound room. And then kind of elevated myself to one of the producers, and then just an on-camera, host. And then with one of the other shows, kind of just tried to get involved as much as I possibly could. But that was a great experience, because I think at that time, early on in my college days, I really didn't know truly what I wanted to do. I wanted to find an avenue in sports because, that's what I was really passionate and what I'm still very much passionate about. But I think just like a lot of people trying to find their way, at some point or another, you think, a sports center anchor or a sports reporter or, a sports writer. So, I think at the time, wanting to be on TV and being that on-air personality was something that I originally wanted to do. And then obviously I pivoted a little bit as I got a little bit more experience in some of the different things that you could do. So I think just having that opportunity, even though I'm not on TV now, to say that I was able to have at some point in my life to kind of have that role where I could be, and I still have all of the episodes on DVD and have to probably break them out at some point just to see, how ridiculous I was at the time and what I was saying and all of my hot takes, if they ended up turning out to be the way that I thought they would or not, you never know. But definitely a great opportunity on campus to do something like that.
Yeah. And were you involved in anything else on campus or in the communication department?
Yeah. So I was I wrote for the Collegian. I was the beat writer for the women's basketball team. So when the women's basketball team was in season, I went to every home game and traveled to pretty much every road game that I could by car. Interviewed the coach after every game, some of the players. So, I treated that like a huge passion project of mine for those 2 or 3 years that I was doing that. And then, during the off season, either in the fall or late spring, was just a general sports columnist. My one friend was the editor of the sports section. So I would just pitch different story ideas that I would want, different articles I wanted to write, and then kind of went from there. And then I was also a student broadcaster with WEXP. So I had a radio show with a friend of mine, but then we would also broadcast the men's and women's basketball games. So same thing, along with a ton of friends who were part of WXP at the time. Tried to do as many home games as I could for both teams. And then we would, again, travel to as many road games as we could, lugging all the equipment. I was trying to think the other day, there was so much equipment that, if you threw everything in front of me right now, would I be able to kind of plug everything in the right way? And I don't even know if I would be able to do that anymore, but just another great experience on campus, and really grateful to have an opportunity like that and to do it with my friends when I was in school.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite things about LaSalle is that there's so many different opportunities and they really encourage just doing it all. So that's one of my favorite things. And also, LaSalle's communication department has great classes and professors that help students. What's one of the most important things that you've gained from, your classes or learned from your professors?
Yeah, well, first, I just want to I gave a shout out to Tanya Ellis, but I also want to give the same shout out to Mike Smith, who was my PR professor. I took Intro to PR 101, and he really helped open my eyes to, public relations, community relations, writing press releases. I still keep in touch with him. Brother Jerry Molyneux, who I believe is still there. There's a lot of LaSalle connections in the Eagles organization. A lot of them have been driven by Brother Jerry. Pretty much our entire video department that's cutting up practice film for our players and coaches are all LaSalle grads. And they all kind of started out under the guidance of Brother Jerry. So between Tanya, Professor Smith, and Brother Jerry, just a lot of great leadership in that communication department. Ton of experience under their repertoire that they're kind of instilling in all of their students, and I was grateful to be one of them. So right off the bat, just to have great leadership in the building, looking out for students, kind of pointing them in the right direction is so helpful for you to kind of get your footing and kind of figure out, what path you want to go down. But then also, I think just the structure of the program, it's big and comprehensive, but it's not too small. It's kind of like right in the middle. So I think for me, knowing right out of the gate, okay, when I was kind of exposed to LaSalle TV, I was exposed to the Collegian, I was exposed to WEXP, I knew right off the bat, okay, these are the things that I want to do. And within those different areas, these are the projects that I want to work on. I think maybe at some other colleges and universities, depending on how big the enrollment is, sometimes you have to wait your turn. And sometimes you may have to wait until your senior year to, get on TV or get behind the microphone or be a beat writer for one of the teams for the college newspaper. I was in a position where I was able to do all of those things right away. And I was able to put all of those things on my resume. So when it came time to interview for that first internship with the Camden River Sharks or the internship with the Philadelphia 76ers, I already had a full resume to put down on an employer's desk to say, these are all the things that I'm doing on campus. These are all the things I'm trying to take advantage of. And then honestly, when I graduated, when I was working game days for the Eagles in 2008, I still needed another job, Monday through Friday. I started out as a graduate assistant in LaSalle's athletic communications department. Cale Beers, who's no longer there, but he was there for decades. He was the director of athletic communication at the time. And I wouldn't have had that position if it wasn't for building a relationship with him as a student broadcaster and as a communication major, our paths crossed a lot on campus. I was a student, he was a full-time employee, but a lot of the work he was doing in the athletic department was crossing over with the stuff that whether I was covering the school's sports teams for the newspaper, or broadcasting the games for WEXP. So kind of developing a relationship with him helped springboard a position for me coming right out of school. And then working in that department for a year and a half, then springboarded me into an internship, a full-time internship with the Eagles. So everything essentially directly or indirectly comes back to my education at LaSalle, the activities that I was involved in, the professors that taught me, and really just the people on campus that I was able to network and develop relationships with.
Yeah, it's definitely a great community. And I love how small it is, because you can really, do everything.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's something that's great. And so as a incoming senior, it's kind of daunting thinking about what to do after college. What's some of your advice for students who are studying communication or future students?
Yeah, well, I think the first thing, and look, it's easy to say, try to figure out what you want to do, right? It's easy to say that, but sometimes, quite honestly, you may not find out until a year or two after you graduate. But I think the one thing I'll say, and, I can only speak for myself and the industry that I work in. So, I'll kind of give this example, just working in public relations. When we're hiring our interns each year, or if someone leaves and we're looking for a full-time employee, but probably more so our seasonal associates, our interns, when these resumes are coming through, the one thing we look at is what type of, even though we always try to be mindful that these are college students and we don't expect them to have a ton of experience, at that point in their lives yet. But, we want someone who has relevant experience so that once they start, we don't have to hold their hands too much. Like they can kind of jump right into the fire and go. So, at each school, LaSalle has one. And like I said, I kind of started out as a graduate assistant in the athletic communications department. Every school has a PR department kind of working on, with the athletic teams. So the one thing that we like to see is when a resume comes through is this person working in the athletic communications department at their school? Have they been a student worker all 4 years? Did they just start? Do they have no experience? Do they have, like, if they're coming in, do they have a general understanding of what we do as a department, how we're supporting our players and coaches and the larger organization? So I think, at LaSalle, whether you're working in PR or whether you want to go in mass media, or if you want to be a journalist, those opportunities are there on campus. And a lot of these activities you don't have to apply for, and you don't have to compete with other people kind of coming in, interviewing for the same job, right? So, if you want to be a journalist, start writing for the Collegian. If you want to be on TV, or if you want to be a producer for a TV station, you have LaSalle 56. If you want to get into radio, you have WXP. If you want to get into sports PR, you have the athletic communications department right there that are always looking for student workers to be running stats during, TV timeouts, or, just working in the office on non-game days, working on media guides. So when it comes time to submit your resume for an internship or a full-time job, in one of those industries, you already have that experience that you were able to capitalize on, in school. Because without that, not everyone is falling backwards into full-time jobs and full-time internships without any experience. It's way too competitive these days. When we post our internships, just within like the first 2 or 3 days, we get like 500 resumes. We hired someone from the University of Alabama, and then someone from Ohio State University for this upcoming season. So it's not just local to Philadelphia. These are, people are competing across the country, for these positions. So it's very, very competitive. So I think the most important thing is, as the best you can, throughout your early years of school, really trying to fine tune and figure out, like, what do I want to do for the next, 30 to 40 years of my life? Because if you find something you enjoy doing, it'll never feel like work. And that's, for me, that's how I feel. The work that I do, it doesn't feel like work. There's a lot of times, when everyone goes to bed at night, I'll go and open up my laptop for another hour and a half. If it was somewhere else, I may not be doing that, but it's just stuff that I have a passion for. And I'm grateful to be in a position to do that, in an area that I grew up in, and I'm not having to travel all around the country. So I think, kind of going back to your original question, try to figure out as best as you can, what interests you. Try to figure out, okay, well, is there an occupation out there that can pay my bills doing what I enjoy doing? And for me, I was able to kind of find that out early on. Okay, public relations, all the things that come with that job, I like doing. Well, how can I get there? Well, let me start applying for some of these PR internships with some of the local teams, so that I can travel back and forth from home, and I'm not having to move to another city for a year and then come back home. So I think that's the one thing. And then you have all of those resources and activities on campus to get all of that experience, so that it can get you ready for that internship or that that full-time entry-level job.
Yeah. That's really good advice, because I kind of just threw myself into doing a bunch of different clubs and stuff. And now I'm loving it. But at first I didn't know what I wanted to do, but like getting involved, and, Tanya really pushed me. She's like, I need you to do this for me. I'm like, okay, I guess. But without that push, like, I don't think I would be doing, LaSalle TV and things like that. But it's good to be involved and learn what you want to do, because I still don't really know what I want to do, but definitely it's knocking things off what I don't want to do.
Right. And that's the other part of it too. You can kind of look at it that way. You can, based on internships, different things on campus, you may find out that, okay, maybe this is something I don't want to do. And then you can kind of narrow that down. So you can kind of look at it like, what are the things I want to do? But then you can also look at it like, okay, what are things that I would prefer, that I don't want to do? And then, you can kind of get experience on both sides. And then, eventually you'll kind of narrow it down to a couple different things. And then you can say, okay, let me do everything I can to kind of go down this path and kind of secure, a full-time position here or there.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you so much for joining me today and telling us a little bit about what you do and your experience at LaSalle.
Yeah, not a problem. I appreciate you having me today. Definitely keep me posted on when this is going to run, because I would love to tune in or watch online, or if it's going to be like, a bunch of social clips. Really looking forward to it. And please tell Tanya I said hello. If there's anything she needs, I'm a phone call away. Happy to help and support the department, as much as I can.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. And congratulations on your wife's pregnancy.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you.
That's going to be really exciting.
Yeah, very exciting.
Thanks for tuning into this episode of One on One. I'm your host, Hannah Balkowski, and we'll see you next time.